Hiya, friends. It's Shenanigan, your rat gamer friend who's on the run, and they're closing in all around me. Today, we're discovering I'm a broken soul. Yay! Jedi Survivor is a fantastic game full of excellent combat, story, and just all around. It's my cup of tea. Only thing is, in my immense foolishness, I decided I'd do a no damage challenge as my very first playthrough. This means if I take damage at all, in any way, I have to restart from the last save point. I did it for Jedi Fallen Order in 300 to 400 attempts. Surely, my naive younger self said, I could do the same for Survivor. Oh, if only. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself, and we have a lot to cover. So after giving you guys a big old spoiler warning and setting the difficulty to Grandmaster level, let's go try to survive unscathed. Like every great game before it, we start off imprisoned. But also, Cal Kestis has that style. Finally, I've succeeded at being handsome. And I've decided as a handsome person, I'd rather not be in prison, so I keep trying to leave. But for some reason, they won't let me. At least it's only minor shoves. Nobody seems to care that much that I keep trying to escape. But that's likely because it's a trap. No, settle down, Admiral Akbar. It's a trap by our team, for the baddies. This senator has information we need, and of course that means an elaborate fake imprisonment, because those are always fun. It really should tell me plenty about what's to come when I take my first hit nearly immediately. Second time's the charm, and down comes the senator's yacht. And also, down comes Cal, because he can't seem to figure out when you blow up a ship's ability to fly, it's gonna come down hard. Gravity sucks. I know. My second hit comes from some stormtroopers while trying to reach safety, but after a little research, I discovered that this is a scripted hit, and therefore can be ignored. Fighting my way through the tutorial Imperials isn't difficult, and they're always more than willing to lend a hand, as does my new friend Bode. Wow. You can really feel the look of betrayal in that stormtrooper. That must suck getting betrayed like that. Good thing I'll never have to worry about anything like that. With his help, I should have no trouble taking down the Empire. And since I haven't meditated in a while, that means going back nearly the very start of the game. This makes me paranoid for the rest of the game, and I meditate after every little thing. Find a cool rock? Time to meditate. Find a new shortcut? Time to meditate. Feel like meditating? Time to meditate. It probably slows down the missions a bit, I admit, but hey, I have a lot to think about, like how to spend my skill points. Of course, as this is a no damage challenge, my health bar doesn't really matter, but that doesn't stop me from improving it right away. Sure, it's to get the improved block ability locked behind it, but I guess it's a bit of a power move as well. Bode and I are ambushed by the rudest security droid. Why he was hiding there? I have no clue, but at least I do know he makes for a very easy first boss. Or first mini-boss, I suppose. It does help to have Bode fight my battles for me. With his defeat, we can link up with the rest of our team and get that info we want. You know, all things considered, that wasn't too hard. I guess for once, things are going my way. Castus! Yep. Okay. That's more what I'm used to. It's always nice to see old faces, except when that face is attached to 400 pounds of rage and muscle that is the Ninth Sister. But before I get to fight her, I willingly subject myself to loss after loss against a security droid. These guys gave me no trouble in Fallen Order, but they're a little bit more prepared now. Oh my god, he's got a gun! I'd love to point out that was a completely optional fight where the reward is a healing stim, which as we know, I'll never be able to make use of. It was the principle of the matter. At least my fight with the Ninth Sister goes much better. Relatively, anyways. I still lose plenty, but I do discover the greatest thing ever. Skippable cutscenes. It's more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. She's not really a tough boss, but I'm not really a skilled player, so we suit each other perfectly. It's pretty awkward though when I realize after beating her, I accidentally am clean shaven, which is a big no for me, so quickly I had to grow out a beard mid-sentence with her. One of the lesser known Jedi powers. It only slightly took from the emotional slaying of her. And now, I can dual wield my blade. So cool. Oh, nope. Not skilled enough for this. Back to my boring, safe, regular blade. I need as much block bar as I can have. That's why double-sided lightsaber for life. It takes many engagements and makes them so much simpler when the enemies are basically having a gunfight with themselves. With that, I escape Coruscant, but not without a damaged ship. So off to find Grease, my old friend, so he can repair my ship, but not before I watch a wholesome memory of them bonding together as a family. Right in the feels. I love them so much. We crash land on Kobo, which at this point I'm convinced that's the only kind of landing that exists in the Star Wars galaxy, and get to finding Grease. But I'm me, and that means I get distracted very easily, instead rack up tons of resets just fighting the local battle droid population and wildlife. I'd like to point out now, whoever designed the B2 battle droids, you suck. And I'm gonna track you down for it and make you fight them for eternity. I don't hold grudges, so I'll make sure to find you quickly before I can get over it. When I say I rack up tons of resets, I really mean it. My insistence on getting into numerous optional fights while hampered by a need for no damage is a true recipe for pain. Hours go by resetting when there's really very little opposition between me and Grease's location. You think this might actually mean I'm getting better at least, but nope. No growth, just pain. But hey, I get to fight a bunch of spiky ball creatures, and that's one of my odder experiences in life, so that's fun. I was on this planet for 6 hours before I ever even made it to the nearby town, and I was immediately rewarded with meeting the new love of my life, Turgle. Oh my god, he's a frogman. I love it. I shall shatter the bodies and the minds of all who threaten him. I feel so protective of Turgle that I beat the mini-boss attacking him on my first go. Stay away from my frogman. Finally inside, I meet up with Grease for a very heartwarming reunion. And as you can see, I was out in that wilderness for so long that my beard grew a bit out of control. I think it works for me though. Very conveniently, Grease's saloon unknowingly happens to be directly over the main plot of the game. Falling down a deep hole, I discover a High Republic chamber, which if you don't know, the High Republic was a time when the Republic was a bit more laid back, and 420 was their favorite time. Nah, not really. Well, maybe. But it was a high point for the Republic and Jedi Order for sure. Down here, I discover Z, a High Republic droid who I managed to save, and from her, learn about Tandalore, a magical place where everything is perfect and happy. At least I assume so with how everyone in this game is obsessed with it. But its main purpose is the fact that it's hidden behind a great abyss, which means the Empire shouldn't be able to reach it. So now we have our MacGuffin, let's get to hunting how to get there. Well, okay, I'll get to it in a second anyways. First, I need to hang out with my good buddy Turgle, and I guess maybe do some plumbing, and of course spend what little resources I've built up exploring on a key card so I can retrieve my reward of another healing stem I'll never be able to use. But with all that done, it's time to go. No, still not really. First, I want to explore this cave, and oh looky, a boss fight that's definitely going to kill me plenty. And I do mean kill. He doesn't even give me a chance to reset the fight. 20 times to be exact, which I'll tell you now will sadly be one of the lowest boss resets I'm going to get away with for this challenge. I hope all my enemies act as slow and predictable as that guy. And I immediately get that answered as a big no when I lose right after in an optional fight with a B2 battle droid. When I finally do get on task, oh, come on, another distraction? Why the heck am I platforming in a weird force vision as opposed to going after the main story? 'Cause it's fun, and I can. Not smart, sure, but who needs that? And regardless, when I finally actually get back on task, I come across a Mogu beast bashing a trooper body for fun. By Obi-Wan's sacred beard, no. Stay away. This is what I deserve for staying on task. Oh wait, he's an optional fight? Never mind, let me at him. Finally, I get back to the story. But instead of a key, I find a man. A man and a Bacta tank. And when I see into his past using the Force, I find a real connection with the guy. I feel very, very close to him, you could say. So close that after realizing the fella, Dagan Gera, is a Jedi from old days, Cal decides to free him immediately and hand him his weapon. Yep, Cal's not what we call a think through his actions before he does them kind of guy. It's where we're quite alike. But of course, despite my connection to Dagan here, he decides to do a dramatic angle reveal that he's no longer a Jedi. Very cool. Less cool though when I have to spend attempt after attempt fighting him. I let him kill me on my second attempt so I don't have to keep flashbacking into the past, and boy am I glad I did that. Cause for the next hour and a half, Dagan and I really spent way too much time together. This guy's been stuck in a Bacta tank asleep for centuries, lost his arm right before he went to sleep, just found out everyone he ever possibly cared about is likely dead, and most of what he knew has been destroyed, but absolutely none of that matters enough to stop him from completely wrecking me time and time again. Thankfully, most of his attacks are quite easy to parry, though it took me quite a bit to figure out to dodge towards him, not away, when he spin charges at me. When I finally beat him at least, I can be done with him for good. Oh wait, nope. Of course, he's escaping with the raiders I fought earlier. The man just woke up and he already has more friends than I do. Speaking of my friends, better get back to them and tell them how this angry ex-Jedi is running around and has somehow escaped his imprisonment. How he did? No idea. Certainly wasn't me. Probably those raiders. But however he magically ended up free, we need to beat him to Tanalorr. That means going to Jedha in order to find Seer, the other Jedi that's alive and actually doesn't want to kill me. But first, I take the time to buy wisdom from Z in order to increase my experience gains. Wow, all these years, people thought they could find wisdom through meditation, deep conversations, being at one with nature, libraries, and who knows where else. But it turns out, you just have to buy it. I had no idea. On Jedha, I find it very satisfying to wipe out groups by deflecting their bolts back at them, but far less enjoyable getting grabbed by this monster under the sand. I really don't have the situation in hand when I get trapped on this giant hand, and any move off of it means the creature will attack. He's quite a handful for sure, but I finally have to gamble and hope it doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. Of course, when I do escape the giant scorpion, which come on, why is it no matter what, there's always giant spiders or giant scorpions? I know I'm getting sidetracked here, but this is Star Wars, isn't it? Why is it always giant bugs I gotta fight? Let me get brutally killed by something I won't recognize as a big version of something that's terrifying as is on Earth. Like these crab creatures who are really easy to beat, but there's so many of them and one unlucky hit knocks me back to the start of the planet. And when I finally make it past all that, I'm ambushed by jet troopers, who are surprisingly quite easy to beat using deflections. But when cutscene Cal starts to get overwhelmed, enter the true hero of our story, Merrin. Merrin shows off her amazing skills, and she even stays to help me fight off waves of Imperials, and yet, she's not nearly as dangerous outside of the cutscene. Don't get me wrong, I love Merrin, but I'd probably love her even more if she was as deadly in-game as cutscene her. But then again, I'm nowhere near as skilled as cutscene Cal, so I guess this fits. When I managed to beat my way through the threats, I decided to stop for the night. But I break a sacred rule of gaming. I assumed my Xbox wouldn't close out of the game since it normally doesn't. I was wrong and came back to have to doing it all over again, which meant a half hour more of attempts. Apparently, if I can do it once, that doesn't mean I can do it twice with ease. Thankfully, that rule doesn't need to apply when Merrin and I land in a Skriton lair, which is Star Wars speak for we're gonna die horribly to a giant scorpion. Or we would if I didn't heavily rely on Merrin to beat it. We then get to ride through a storm together on a big old horsey, fight off an annoying ATST, and take shelter in a cave. Honestly, not a bad date. It had excitement, death, teamwork, and frankly, me getting all gleeful at the sight of these two cuties and their obvious feelings for each other. I'm sorry, but I'm spending the majority of this game getting my butt kicked across the galaxy, time and time again. So when I get to see something as adorable as this, I'm gonna enjoy it and make ya all do it with me. But since this is a challenge video and not just supposed to be me fanboying, let's jump forward a little to us having met with Seer. Bode is here, and so is this old guy who led me around by hologram a lot through the first game. Bode gives me my new favorite stance of the game, the blaster stance. It's more aggressive than the regular stance obviously, and far more uncivilized, but I like having access to a weapon that grants me basically free easy hits. It doesn't stop me from going out and getting demolished in fight after fight on Kobo, but that's just because I'm so unskillful in general. And it certainly doesn't stop me from almost reaching for the abort challenge button when I'm ambushed by my first bounty hunter. What should be a simple fight becomes my own personal hell. Lim over here is very easy to dodge and deflect in almost every way, and he even has very little health. What he also has is a love for grenades. Lots of them. Too much to force push back at him for me, and extremely hard to dodge. It took me quite a while before I figured out they were dodgeable at all, in fact, and even then, it took very precise timing. For hours, I fought this not even a real boss, and even once gave into the dark side enough that I decided to let loose on him, regardless of damage done to me, just to prove how easy it is to kill him. I, of course, restarted the fight before it could progress further, though, and resumed another half hour of losing. Finally, I decided to try something I never try with these games, because it always ends badly. I became an aggressive fighter. Staying on the defense is always my go-to, but it turns out here, being aggressive allowed me to beat on my first try with this tactic. Wish I had realized that 2 hours ago. Thankfully, when put against another mini-boss, this one with a lightsaber a moment later, I found it much simpler to win. And the bounty hunter after that was only slightly harder. But thankfully, a pure defense strategy worked wonders there. Always nice when the enemy is basically just shooting themselves, but does absolutely nothing to change that. With all those guys dealt with, I get to do what man has long dreamed of and go to the moon. I suspect it's less of a big deal to these guys, but hey, Still cool to me. Except now here's another time for me to get stuck for hours. Not to a boss, but first to 2 super battle droids. But I beat them. So now 3 commando droids. But I beat them also. So now a combination of overwhelming blaster fire while balancing on a small beam while getting bombarded by waves of electricity. Yep, that has a way of making it quite difficult to progress when all those are in a row without a save point. Thankfully, it also makes me far better at dealing with all those droids, and I'm able to make it past the electricity by shooting the droids from afar. To of course get hit by steam literally moments before the save point. Yep, the shenanigan guarantee of almost winning but losing to something dumb strikes again. When I do make it past, I'm greeted by a lightsaber wielding raider boss. But this one is quite simple when I realize once again, just keep my distance and deflect all shots back at him. I can't keep getting away with this, but somehow I do. And as a reward, I get the crossguard saber, which I absolutely hate and will not touch the moment the game lets me get back to normal. Super slow saber combat. It's not for me, as I'm certain I will take a hit. But at least with all that done, I guess I can just leave the moon. I got the information I needed, but frankly, after all that suffering, no way was it worth it. Back to Jeddah to get beat by another giant scorpion, but even worse, an Imperial war droid that really wants to make me cry. This thing does not relent, and even pulls a, it's just a scratch Monty Python style on me, still trying to kill me without any arms, which it actually succeeds at. I'm starting to think this game really is trying to drive me crazy. At least now I know how to dash in the air, which is fun and looks cool. Why Cal couldn't do that earlier and only just now figured it out? I'm not really sure, but it's still cool. And now I can fly through the air with Marin, which makes it all worth it. She even uses magic to make us literally fly, which is insanely cool, even if I'm absolutely terrified of messing up and getting knocked back at any point. I'm starting to not even know why I'm doing the things I'm doing. All I know is I go to places and stab people and hopefully not get hit. Something about doing the same fights for hours in a row can make it a bit harder to keep track of. But from what I can tell, I did all that to save refugees, and I guess not just to earn a kiss with Marin? I doubt that, frankly, but sure. And now I'm back to Kobo to find a special compass to make it to Tanalorr. That is, unless I get sidetracked and run off to go exploring again, which is exactly what I do, and it doesn't go so bad. For me anyways, which for anyone else, the amount I restart would probably be considered awful. That is, till I come across an Imperial outpost, and while it starts out okay, it's actually the armpit of hell. Every time I think the fighting's over, another wave of Imperials appear, before it ends with a bunch of scout troopers, 2 jet troopers, and worst of all, 2 Imperial droids trying to kill me. Attempt after attempt here ends in terrible failure, enough so that I finally say fine and let them keep it. It's optional anyways, so why suffer needlessly, right? Except that's like my whole thing with these challenges, and I had to suffer with Bode by breaking into the Raiders' huge headquarters. They've actually captured Z, and we need to rescue her. It's not the hardest thing I've faced to get past the guards, but that's not saying much. Especially when dealing with big old hammer-wielding guard here, who I don't figure out how to properly beat till much later on, so my fight ends poorly time and time again. Thankfully, when I encounter their boss, Ravis, he's only a cutscene fight, which is no worry for me. More of a worry is reaching Z and getting into round numero dos with our old friend Dagan. This time he's much more into his double-sided lightsaber, doing cool spin tricks with it and making it much harder for me to understand his attacks. Thankfully, I can figure out how to parry his spinning lightsaber quite reliably and stay far enough away to keep making him do an easy-to-dodge charge at me, but that doesn't change that it takes almost 3 hours to beat him without getting touched. I was a coward throughout with lots of hit and runs, but whatever works, right? I mean, the guy is clearly covered in lightsaber burns, but I'm the one losing the fight. Sure, yeah, whatever. Good thing Bode shows up and off-runs Dagan yet again. The problem with being the main villain is I can't kill the guy halfway through the game. Having rescued Z, I leave the ship and immediately manage to wind up in another boss fight. Thankfully, this one beastie is optional, but that doesn't stop me from refusing to learn my lesson and fight it anyways. And actually, I win after a few tries thanks to the power of mind control and blasters. Still, not learning my lesson, I engaged in some mini-boss hunting. The first took me a bit, but I was able to use the mystical technique of chucking a bomb at them, which helped. Right after, I'm ambushed by another over the contents of this chest, and it disturbs me how long the guy had been waiting here when the chest only held color designs for my lightsaber. I think it's fair that I beat him on my first try by deflecting the bolts back at him, because I'd feel a bit insulted to lose to him over that. And I had a bit more trouble with the bounty hunter duo on the Shattered Moon once again, but thankfully they didn't have the sense to fight at the same time. With all those guys done, surely I was ready to take on Ravis, the raider leader. Well, doubtful given how much trouble I have just beating all the enemies standing between us, but it's time to find out. Ravis is actually quite a fun boss in my opinion, and it doesn't take overly long to beat him. Okay, to beat his first health bar. Ravis here is a Gendai, which means he can heal for practically anything, and in game terms, that means our friend here has a second health bar. Yep, and this is where things get really maddening. I'm not the best fighter, as you can clearly tell by now. I rely more on wits, which I have very little of to be fair, and patience. That should mean I can get a feel for Ravis's moves, but despite having no trouble reaching his second health bar over and over, he makes sure to hit me quite quickly with his much more aggressive playstyle. Not cool. Not cool. So if I thought my losses were already at such a high number, then Ravis is more than happy to boost them ever sky high. Eventually though, I of course learn his moves and master the fight. Okay, no, not really. I just couldn't quite get the handle on it, but I did figure out one key thing. Ravis loves to shoot his blaster at me, and even though he shoots missiles at the same time, they're quite easy to avoid. So I decided to rely on a long game of patience, whittling his health down the same way I handled the raiders and bounty hunters before, letting his own blaster be his downfall. But at last, down went Ravis. Can that please be the final boss, and we can just pretend Dagan Gera doesn't exist? Not gonna happen? Fine, fine. But see, now the problem I really face is turns out that Imperial base that broke my spirit earlier and sent me packing? Yeah, wasn't optional after all. It was just waiting for right now. Oh, fantastic. Despite my many attempts before on it, I was no better for quite a while, and only through a war of attrition am I finally able to take down the base. It took 2.5 hours, right after the 3.5 hours of the Ravis boss fight. Wow. So this is what losing my mind feels like then. Fun. Fun. And it turns out that's nothing. Because while I finally have some luck fighting off the guards between me and Dagan, Dagan goes less than swimmingly. Bode is with me, and he's great for phase 1 of the fight, or as I like to call it, Bode's turn to get stabbed for a while. Phase 2 is a bit more troublesome, as Dagan remembers he's a Force user, and much, much better at it than I am. But still, I'm able to pull through not too long into it. Phase 3 is much more annoying, with hallucinations, and Bode is fully out of the fight by now as well. While I do have a strong grasp on Dagan's tactics by now, and if this wasn't a challenge run, I'd probably have him defeated in a couple tries. Unfortunately, I'm much too foolish to do a regular run or an easier challenge, and my suffering grew to an all-time high here. Dagan and I battled time and time again. He'd win some, I'd almost win others, but no matter what, I'd always fall for one move sooner or later. I can't use trickery, and while I learned his moveset pretty quickly, it's very difficult to suppress my instinct to block or dodge when I need to wait to see what he does first. 235 tries, 5.5 hours. That's how long it took before Dagan finally fell. And by fall, I do mean beating me right away in cutscene mode. Of course. Yet again, he didn't touch me once, but his cutscene self is kicking me horizontal. You know, maybe Cal might not be as good of a fighter as Dagan, but Cal's certainly knowledgeable about trauma and being stuck in the past, so he's able to use that to throw Dagan off just enough for a killing blow. Yay! It's much too late for my sanity, but yay! Now, before we go on to the end of our story, I want to warn everyone that the biggest spoilers are right after this, so if you don't want to see it, feel free to stop here and come back when you're ready. Or, you know, do whatever you'd like. Anyways, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Spoiler time! Well, this sure doesn't seem like an ending, and I've had a feeling since the very beginning of the game about a certain somebody. It certainly doesn't bode well for me when everything seems super happy now, and even though I love to see Marin and Cal being adorable together, this can only end badly. I've been waiting for this moment all game ever since Bode warmed his way into the group as the most obvious traitor ever. But it's nice to see it finally occurring. I mean, it's tragic as heck as our friend is gunned down by someone the whole group trusted, and the Empire is rapidly breaking down our door. But hey, it means I was right. So you know, it evens out. This is where things go really bad though. I was up till 3 a.m. fighting Dagon, and woke up right away to now have to fight Bode, who, by the way, is another Jedi survivor, because of course. And more than that, I quickly find out while trying to see the scope of his abilities that this fight is not supposed to be won. That's why there's no save point before, pushing me back a couple minutes before I speeder chase after Bode. So now, if I want to immediately lose to Bode over and over, I have to deal with this long chase scene. And Bode is not an easy fight at all. His attacks are brutal, fast, and has a good delay at points, making them less than simple to predict for me. Plus, the little traitor knows how to deflect my blaster bolts at me. That's my whole trick. His block bar refills quickly, and his blaster bolts destroy my own block bar rather easily. And what damage I can get through amounts to very, very little. So what does this all equal? Pain. For 1 hour, I put up with losing to Bode before I finally have to decide to do something I've never done before. At 76 hours and 56 minutes with 1,649 resets, which would have been more if my game didn't randomly shut down, I accepted that I lost the challenge. I know I can win against Bode. It's like slamming my head into a wall. I've more than proven the wall will break before my very hard head, but it will take who knows how many more hours and attempts, all with no save point before, just to win barely, only for more fights of the same nature, even harder likely. Perseverance will always succeed, but I don't want to win solely because of that. I can, but I'd rather win because I showed some decent skill, and since I'm obviously not ready for that, I'll have to restart this challenge on a different day, after I've hopefully, miraculously improved. I just didn't want to not share this adventure with you regardless of the outcome. So, can you beat Jedi Survivor without taking damage? Absolutely. Can I? Not quite yet, but I will. I have tons of Jedi Survivor challenges in mind though, as I absolutely love the game, so worry not, you won't have to wait long to see how the rest of the story unfolds. Until then, thank you for sticking with me through my longest video yet. I'm sorry it didn't have a happy ending, but that's because it's not truly over. I'll be back for Bode. Now go have an amazing day. Remember, it's perfectly healthy to take much needed breaks, and that I'm rooting for you. See you later, friends.